Hello, good morning. Welcome to another cycling video. It's just gone 7 AM on Tuesday, 31st of August, bank holiday Monday yesterday. I'm just setting off on a 200-kilometre ride. It's based around the DIY Audax, although, as I keep saying, I'm not riding them officially, but I do use the framework. I work at the time allowance, which in this case is 14 hours and 12 minutes, and I try and stick to that. Today I'm heading over to South Wales. I'm going to go over one of the big famous ascents called the Tumble, although the walkers probably know it better as the Blorenge. That's one of the big summits around Abergavenny. So I'm taking the Bath to Bristol bike track from Bath, my hometown. Going to skirt around Bristol, cross the Severn Bridge, over to Usk, and then head up towards Pontypool, up through the World Heritage Site of Blorenge, and then start the climb of the Tumble. You'll see if I show you the map with a profile on. You'll see I'm taking the more gradual ascent, and then there's a big plunge down towards Abergavenny where I'll probably stop and have a coffee. I'll speak to you more when I get over towards Blorenge. Before we get to Blorenge, I'm on the Severn Bridge, as you may guess. There's a couple of things I really wanted to point out to you actually. That's the old ramp that preceded this bridge as the ferry crossing. So there was a ferry there that ran from Ulst across its estuary over to the Bristol side. Phew, I'm out the wind a bit. The second point of interest about this bridge is it's a bit like the Federal Express Arrow. Once you know about it, you will not be able to not see it. When I rode across the Forth Road Bridge on my alternative end-to-end over to Cape Wrath, the road bridge was actually closed to traffic, although I could cycle across. And I was puzzled by that, so I came home and did a little bit of research. And after I did that research, I then took a short open university course. It's free, it's one of these ones you could do in an afternoon. And that used the Forth Bridge as a case study, but it applies equally to this bridge, the Humber Bridge. All these suspension bridges built in the 60s were considered innovative at the time, but Professor Alice Roberts, who did this lesson, a very short 4 or 5 minute film. She's one of these people that understands things really well, but she has that remarkable ability to explain it so it's very easy to understand. And she described what that fatal flaw is. And once you know it's there, as I said, I've never been able to ride across this bridge since and not spot signs of it. If it's still available, I'll drop a link to that short film. It's very well worth watching. It's only 4 or 5 minutes long. And I'll drop it in the description below this video. Anyway, out the wind, onwards that way, bypassing Chepstow, across to Usk, and then I'll head up towards Pontypool and Blorenge. climbed over the big lump between Chepstow and I've dropped down into Usk, as my mate used to call it, the cold of Shire Newton. In fact, I'm just crossing the River Usk now, and I'm going to be heading over this bridge and then that way up to Pontypool. A couple of things worth pointing out maybe. I'm very aware when I ever go to Wales, it's got its own assembly, which is a lawmaking chamber, so the requirements may be different over here. So I've got a mask. My attitude to risk at the moment is, if a shop asks me to wear a mask going in, I'm happy to comply. I'm not going to make a song and dance about it. If a shop or a supermarket is relatively empty, I'm not wearing one in. If it looks busy, I am. Simple as that, a fairly simple rule. As I said, I'm not sure what the rules are over here, so I've come prepared. The other thing is, you may have noticed on that profile, up to the top of this tumble is a very long gradual climb, and now that's where this starts. The road up to Pontypool just seems unnecessarily hard. You don't realise how much you're climbing, and then the road from Pontypool up through Blorenge feels even harder because you can't see any summits. They're sort of obscured by the valley and the forest, and it's not until you pass through Blorenge, nearly right at the summit of the tumble, you suddenly realise, oh gosh, I'm very, very high, and it all sort of makes sense then. So the first time you ever come this way, you think, why is it so hard? But there is a reason, and there's a great payback as well, a fantastically fast switchback in descent down to Abergavenny. That's clever. I've never seen a windsock like that before, guiding you into this garage. It really does catch your eye. It's now midday and I'm at the War Memorial Gardens in Blorenge. It's a World Heritage Site. It's renowned for the big pit museum, the ironworks. There's plenty of industrial heritage around here. I've just come up that way. It's quite a grind up from Pontypool. It's just an unforgiving road, and you can see it carries on up that way. It starts to really kick in around the corner as you approach the open moorland of the summit of the Tumble. I'm just stopping here to gather my strength, take on some energy. Following on from my last video, when I went through some of the things I eat on a ride, I've just had a bit of an energy dip, to be honest, and I've got some ham sandwiches in my bag. I'm not going to have them all now, but I'm going to have one because there's a long stretch before we get across to Abergavenny. I've got one of these monster drinks. I sometimes find them too much to drink, actually. I can always top my water bottle up with the excess. One of these cola Calippos, I really got a taste of those. I love those now. And also for our wedding anniversary, our gorgeous niece gave us a Marks and Spencer's hamper, and I love ginger cake. My wife doesn't like it, so she said, you're going to have to take it out in the bike with you to eat it. I said, well, you know, if you insist. So I've been munching through ginger cake this morning. That was really nice. It's still very moist, actually. So yeah, 5 or 6 minutes here. I'll give my Garmin a charge as well, so about 10 minutes here, gather my strength before the final kick round the corner. As I made reference to earlier on, the road up from Pontypool especially, it just feels like a grind because you're riding alongside uphill, but right underneath the foot of quite a wooded hillside, and the road just feels unforgiving. It can be busy at times as well, quite rutted in places as well, and very gradually uphill and today I'm going into a headwind, and it just feels much harder than it should be. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, you'll get round the corner shortly and then you'll think, that explains it. It all becomes open moorland. You go across a cattle grid, there's a switchback as you climb steeply up towards the summit, and then you're up there looking down on these sweeping views, and it all makes sense now. This is the section where the steepness really kicks in. There's all these switchbacks, hairpins, as you leave the built-up area of Blorenge and you head up towards the summit of the Tumble. That's all along there. But you get an idea of all the landscape here, the valleys. You suddenly begin to realise, gosh, you're actually really high up there. Even though the iron furnaces and the coal mines long since gone, it's still got that very industrial feel to it, post-industrial feel. Over the cattle grid now, approaching the summit. See a big Chinook flying across. How those things stay airborne amazes me. Aeroplanes, I understand the concept of aerodynamics. That just looks like a shoebox with a couple of propellers holding it up. This really does feel wild up here. Yeah, just I'd imagine what, about 100 yards down in elevation. That's the end of the built up area. There's even a football pitch there. It really does feel industrial until you almost reach the summit, and you probably see this time of year these wonderful patches of purple heather about to come into season. Wow. This is the summit then, looking back down to the industrial valley. Summit, 512 metres, whatever that is in feet. And I think the Blorenge must be that hill just sticking up over there. I think it's on the right hand side. Anybody who knows better, please please correct me. There's a little hilltop lake there. I always think if they say mountains are the water towers of the world, I often think then hills must be the water bowsers of the world. Look at that view across to the Brecon Beacons and the Black Mountains, Cambrian Hills all in front of us. As I came into Pontypool, I saw a boundary sign saying the Brecon Beacons National Park. I didn't think it extended out this far. I don't really know the geography of this area that well. I know the beauty of it. I just noticed there's a Brecon Beacons National Park boundary sign here. I'd never spotted that before. Pulled in this lay-by part of the way down, get a really good open view of the Brecon Beacons here. Look, wow. Gosh. I've just made a very sharp descent down that way, and then I'm on this road. I quite often ride along to Gavillan as I'm heading up towards Talibont and Abergavenny back that way. You'll see there's a sign there just obscured by overgrowth, Blenafon, and then there's a big pit sign below that. This always reminds me of one of my favourite YouTubers here actually. I don't actually watch that many cycling videos, to be honest, because I never watch it on TV, because I really don't class myself as a cyclist. I really don't. But there's three in particular I do like: Adam Watkins, Terry's All Bikes, and Iddy Makaya. And it's one of Iddy's here. He Everested this. I mean, this is the really sharp descent I've just made down. It's much easier coming up the other way, I can assure you. That's quite a hairy descent. So he did his Everest in there, which is the equivalent of 27,000 something feet. I don't know how many reps he did, but it's quite a few. And I think he had some mates here helping him and a camper van, but he's on one of these elliptico bikes, you know, like a giant scooter with the small wheels. One of the reasons I like Iddy's videos so much is he tells you as it is, you know, he's always got a smile on your face, he'll share his deep thoughts with you, and when he's feeling rubbish, he'll tell you, you know, and he'll often get through it, as we all do, and you sort of think, oh well, if he can do it, I can. And he's a personal trainer, so he knows a thing or two about how to optimise his physical side, but he also appreciates the mental side of it, the mental strength side. I'm now on this minor road which runs alongside the busy A40. You may hear it in the distance. You can hear it but can't see it. That's looking back at the hills I've just come across. And as you can see, this is quite quiet. This should take me most of the way into Monmouth on fairly quiet roads. Here's the A40 trunk road. As you can see, it's not particularly busy at the moment. That way would be Abergavenny, and it's heading towards Wye and the Midlands. And there's my little lane running along there. 1 minute the A40 was on my left hand side, and I just realised it's on my right hand side. It keeps switching, or should I say I keep switching. So I carry on along here, about another 6 or 7 miles I guess to Monmouth, then there'll be a direction change. It's about 3 PM now, and I'm on this long straight road paralleling the A40. You can probably hear it on my left hand side. I've just passed near Raglan by the castle, heading towards Monmouth, but it keeps jumping from left to right. I was suddenly aware it is now on my left hand side. Last time I thought about it, it was on my right hand side. I think that's what happens when you just sort of let your mind wander a little bit and go on autopilot. I must have passed underneath it, or it must have passed underneath me, but I've been totally unaware of it. Wow, that is a busy old road. I've come up to this T-junction that runs right alongside the A40. You can see it's a slip road that goes on the A40 heading back the way I've come, although I can turn right and go that way, which is exactly what I'm doing. Monmouth 3 miles. Reminds me of that jiggery dickery I was doing on the final day of my Fossway ride when I kept cutting across the A46, and eventually it really did try and take me into, in fact I think it tried to take me into oncoming traffic, which is when I had to turn round and retrace. As you approach Monmouth, you go up a slight rise, and it's actually going up over those 2 tunnels, and then you come in down there beyond that garage, and then you have to ride, it looks like you have to ride along the A40 just for about half a mile to those traffic lights where we turn right. There's even a cycle path along here. So you don't even have to cross that really busy junction. There's actually a footpath and a tunnel subway that brings you up along here. And then we're going to turn right here. It looks busy, but very shortly it's going to turn right, and that's the Wye Valley Road. It's absolutely stunningly beautiful, up to Tintern, and then the long track up to Chepstow. This is the Wye Valley Road. Look at it. Very V-shaped valley following the River Wye round as it heads towards the point where it flows into the River Severn, actually. Very steeply wooded, as you can see the side. You ride a lot under that tree canopy. I'm now in the Wye Valley at, is it Redbridge or Redbrook, one of the two. Just stopped here to have a mid-afternoon snack. It's just too nice to be rushing. It's gorgeous along here. Here, a little bit of waterfall behind me. The river's just over there. There's my little seat where I've just had my snack. Look at this. The lovely, wonderful River Wye snaking its way along steep wooded valleys either side. Look at some of those houses up there. As this road climbs from Tintern, where the abbey, the ruined abbey is, up to Chepstow, it's a steep hill. Well, let me just home in on that pub sign. If I zoom in, you may see underneath the bell there's an iron bridge. There is the old railway bridge, and that's because there used to be a railway running along here. Where would it have gone from? Monmouth to Chepstow, I guess. It followed the valley along. Well, that didn't go up the big hill. It went through it, through Tintern Tunnel, and recently that's been opened for cyclists and walkers, wheelchair access, I think possibly horses as well. I did consider riding through that today, and I thought it would maybe be too much for one video, and also I want to build it into a wild camp as well. Not quite sure I'm going to camp yet, and ride it on my touring bike, so that's going to be another video soon, hopefully before Christmas. I'm told the railway tunnel is very partially lit, and cyclists are asked not to go through there with lights because it's a bat sanctuary, and I think one of the conditions of it being allowed to be used for leisure access is for that reason. The bats mustn't be disturbed, so that's going to be interesting as well. A few hundred yards further along, under one of the tree canopies, look at this gorgeous view. It's like a little bit of Switzerland. Look at that house as well, right up in the woods there. Wow. Now this road snakes around, does an S-bend, and it too crosses the river on this lovely steel arch bridge. Cut the canoeists just pulled in there, looks like they're having a brew. More dawdling. I've stopped at another one of my favourite little shops in the Wye Valley just to take it all in. Brown's Village Stores. I was getting a little bit short of water actually. I just saw this big red apple in there, really fancied that. So again, a little bit more about what I eat on rides. Said the last time, if I fancy a little treat, I'll give myself one. I just saw that and it just wet my whistle. I thought, yeah, great, I'm going to have that. I'm already on my protein bar as well. This week I've got a protein flapjack. These are much nicer actually than the one I had last time, the chocolate one. I vary it as well. I'll get a box of, I think it's 10 or 15 at a time. Also got Rice Krispies squares, so yeah, it gives you an idea. But oh wow, looking forward to this apple. Although I calculate my time allowance and ride these under the sort of framework of the DIY all that, because I'm not that rigid. If I run out of time, I don't care that much, although my time allowance for tonight is I think 12 minutes past 9, and it gets dark about 8:30 this evening, so I should be home well before that. Still heading towards Tintern. Look at the view of the valley there. Both sides really steeply wooded, and the river is just over there now. Oh, I can just see it behind the trees there. Oh, I just love riding along here. Now passing through Tintern. There's another old steel railway bridge crossing the river here. To be honest, I don't know which side the tunnel's on, whether it's on that side or this side. I'm now beginning to think it might be on this side. Until I work out the route on the GPS, I just can't quite picture it. Just beyond the bridge is the gable end of the old Tintern Abbey. Just before the start of the climb up through the woods, before I drop down to Chepstow, it's a side-on view of the old abbey. I guess it is part of Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. As we start climbing out of the Wye Valley, just give you an idea of this location. Wow, look at all these woods over there. Some of the houses perched up on the hillside as well. And that's the way we're heading, up yonder. Well, approaching the top of the long climb, and I have to say today's been really easy coming up here, as it is sometimes, because you've got a tailwind, and also all the cliff work. For the last few years there's been a lot of work going on these retaining cliff faces, and there's been single file traffic through with roadworks, so you've been under pressure to ride through the quite long gaps actually in between sort of like limited greens of the traffic lights before you got traffic come down against you. That side must have recently been finished. The first one down there is actually covered by plants already, so I guess what they do is they put quite fast growing shrubs in, so next time I come that'll probably be not look quite such a bare scar. A few hundred yards past the brow of this hill is actually the summit, then you drop down, becomes flat, and you go past Chepstow Racecourse. You don't actually go into Chepstow, you go down towards the Severn Bridge, and then I'll be going back across it, taking a slightly different route back to Bath. So I think there's been quite a lot in this video so far. I don't want it to become too long. So I'm going to sign off here. So thank you very much for watching. Until next time. And look out for each other, everybody. Stay safe. Quick little addendum to my film, if that's the right word. I referred last week, sometimes, about 50% of the time, I just have a sugar low towards the end of the ride, and that's exactly what's happened here at Alveston Post Office. Just climbed up from the Severn Bridge, cutting through this residential area before I drop down to Frampton Cotterell bike track, about 20 miles to go. So these places are great. Look, £1 for a bar of dairy milk, fruit and nut. I'll have some of that now and just put the rest in squares in there. And I've got one of these huge juice drinks for £1.19. I won't want all of that now. Again, I'll top up my water bottle, so yeah, that gives you an idea. Regards food when I get home, I've got a pizza and some raspberries from the other day, some left over, and I got back into Scrumpy Jack cider actually. It's like sparkling Scrumpy cider, so I got a can of that as well. Anyway, this really is it. See you next time.